But sometimes I can sense that there's more than one interest on board, which is I want to make sure that my lifestyle is fine. I want to make sure that I am going to be okay financially. I want to make sure that my family's going to be okay, et cetera, et cetera. And something's just not clicking. Something's off. I got a sense that there's something else that wants to happen for me. Who are you at your essence? Who's trying to live through you and as you in this lifetime? Because if you deny that, then to me, like that's the big imposter syndrome. You're always going to feel like a fake. You're always going to feel like you're in somebody else's clothes and role because you're not listening to that essential part of yourself and you're not honoring that essential part of yourself. Even if you have no idea there is an essential part of yourself, something's just always going to feel off. Like something's always going to feel like it's out of tune.
I agree.
You are listening to The New Man, Beyond the Macho Jerk and the New Age Wimp. Your host is men's coach Tripp Lanier.
Do you ever feel like something's just not quite right with your life? Do you have most of what you could want, but still feel like something's missing? And who are you underneath that ambition to succeed and avoid failure? Today, Alyson and I talk about why so many folks feel empty inside, even though they have amazing lives on the outside. We discuss what it means to find our gold, to reveal our essential nature, and what I call the big imposter syndrome. All right, what question do you want to try to find today?
Well, this is not from a this is not from a person
this is from
that
you.
wrote in. This is from me. This is a question from me, yeah.
Okay, I'm excited. Do I sound excited? I need some more coffee. That sausage I had this morning was awful. I don't know what it is.
It was chicken sausage.
Ugh. Those poor chickens.
Homemade chicken sausage.
Homemade chicken sausage.
Yeah.
Wow.
What was awful about it?
The texture, the taste.
Texture was bad too.
Yeah. It just was like, what is this?
I didn't have any of it. I just made it from a recipe online.
It would have helped if you said this is not pork sausage, and I've been expecting that. But then I realized after the second bite it wasn't. We don't need to talk about
like
this.
when you eat something and you're like,
something's
expecting
wrong.
something in your brain and it tastes, it's like.
And you left and it was like, oh, this is how she wants me to die. She's like, here, eat this. And then you leave the house. And then she just comes back like, oh my God, he's dead.
Like, oh my God.
Oh my God, where's the insurance policy? Oh my God, I'm so sad.
Anyway, so I wanted to talk about something that you do that I don't know. I'm so curious if you have, this is a thing that you've learned or if it's something that you naturally do because of who you are. But I have named it Finding Your Gold. I don't even know what you name it. Have you named this thing that you do where you essentially circle somebody, you really kind of get to know them and their world and what's going on for them. And through that, you're able to, what I think that's why I call it Finding Your Gold. You're able to really see what is the gold that they have to offer or what is what's really theirs as part of maybe you're recognizing their essence or something, but what is it? Number one, what do you call it? Do you have a name for what you do? And would you agree that that's what you're doing?
I don't have a name for it. I would just describe it as it probably lives in the neighborhood of kind of helping us figure out or helping us reveal the essence of who we are. Mm-hmm. And then I just project all over them.
What?
You should do this.
Just positive projections.
You're amazing. And people love it.
But you don't do that. I know. You don't say you should do this.
I think it's about essence. I think it's really about just helping kind of like, well, that sounds like old programming, and that sounds like fear, and that sounds like I got to do this or else I'll go broke, and that sounds like this other thing. You start to just move all of those things to the side, and then there's oh, there you are. There's who you are. That's eclipsed and hidden and underneath all of that other stuff. And usually it's just it's like a relief to find that and touch into it. It's a beautiful thing to be seen in that.
It is really beautiful
Place. And then there's usually we'll anyway, so I just.
No, what were you going to say? A place? What place?
Well, it's just, it's really powerful because I don't think a lot of us have been in touch with that since we were very young. And then we start to learn it's part of being a human being. We have to learn how to be in a civilization. So you have to learn the rules, and you learn how to do this, and you learn how to do that. And then, but along the way, we tend to lose touch with who we are on an essential level. Most of us.
Yeah. I remember you did it with me. I assume you knew what you were doing. We were driving to Raleigh, or somewhere, and it was years ago. We weren't actively like, okay, we're going to do a thing. You just started asking me really kind of about my life. In some way, it felt to me at the time that you were just kind of asking me about my life story, more like, well, what was it like when you were little? And then what about here? And then what about there? And it felt to me like you were walking me through my life. And as I was sharing it, and your questions specifically seemed to be about things that I and only I were sort of drawn to or really curious about, things that I were into that maybe I didn't say or share with others, things like that. And I remember just loving your curiosity, period. But I also remember after you asked me all those things, you were able to reflect back to me a thread that existed in me throughout my whole life that I'd never been able to see, which was this, I don't need to name the thread, but it was like not only did I feel deeply seen by you, but I also got to sort of experience myself in a way that I hadn't before. I just hadn't been able to see a unifying thread through that really did have to do with sort of the core me and my essence of what I'm into or what I'm up to here in this life. And I know that the reason I'm sharing that is because I'm amazed that you can do that with people that are coming to you if they're like wanting to change their jobs, or they want a change. They want something different in their life, and they don't know what, or they think they don't know what, or maybe they have a sense, but they're scared or something. And I know that you, at least in the past, I don't know if you still do this with people? In the past, you used to like walk them.
I think when people are open to it.
How do you know if they're open to it?
Well, I think I got to, a lot of times it's like, who's hiring me?
What do you mean?
So it's like, is it the part of the person that is, hey, I want somebody to help me just make more money and be more impressive, or just make sure I don't go broke and make sure I don't end up a failure, those types of things. I don't typically like to work with that.
Yeah.
And I may just say, hey, cool. Well, let me know down the road, when you get tired of this. But sometimes I can sense that there's more than one interest on board, which is, I want to make sure that my lifestyle is fine. I want to make sure that I am going to be okay financially. I want to make sure that my family's going to be okay, et cetera, et cetera. And something's just not clicking. Something's off. I got a sense that there's something else that wants to happen for me. And I think this is, when we talk about essence, what are we talking about? So it's like, it's that part of us that can't be taught. Like we're not taught how to be that version of ourselves. That's so right. If you've ever been around a baby puppy or whatever, been around a group of puppies. Like when we selected our puppy recently, there was something about her that was different from the other puppies. There was, and she hadn't been taught any of that.
Psychoticness? Is that?
We didn't see the psychosis. Fuck. Missed that one.
Yeah, I'm kidding. I know what you mean, though.
But there was a
she
thing
was different. She was different.
And she's actually is more of that.
Yeah.
Right. But there's something like, who are you really? And there's a tendency to like see that very early on in folks. There's like our daughter has a certain way of being, and it's just like if you have a beat on who you want somebody to be, and you're always trying to force them into that, it's tough. I don't want to coach somebody like that. I'd much rather be like, who are you at your essence? Who's trying to live through you and as you in this lifetime? Because if you deny that, then to me, like that's the big imposter syndrome. You're always going to feel like a fake. You're always going to feel like you're in somebody else's clothes and role because you're not listening to that essential part of yourself, and you're not honoring that essential part of yourself. Even if you have no idea there is an essential part of yourself, something's just always going to feel off. Like something's always going to feel like it's out of tune.
I agree. And when you say off and out of tune, I actually think it's like friction, like depression, anxiety, angst. Like it can really show up as existential angst. And
I got everything that I wanted and I'm still just not.
Why am I miserable?
Not, and I'm not even miserable, but just like, this isn't it. This isn't it. But if you understand and you can appreciate that essence fits in there somehow, and that essence is kind of on the most fundamental foundational level who we are as an individual energies, we come in here, then there's what's possible when I start to listen to that and I start to honor that and integrate. It's an integrative process, because it's not, I let that just take over my life and I quit my job and I leave my marriage. I think this is where a lot of people get into these either or scenarios, and I don't work. I'm not about flushing the toilet on everything, but it just is like, who is this aspect of you that hasn't really been honored, and how has it been trying to reveal itself through your life? So I think that's what you were talking about. And I can find these threads throughout your life.
And that's what you do when you're curious with people, is you're actually, when you're curious with them, you're circling them, or you're you're just staying curious. You're actually trying to find out, how has this tried to express itself? Yeah, sometimes
and then I don't know why, I just was into this thing for a while, and then I was into this thing for a while, and I'm like, why?
Kinda
what
like,
are those
what's the
things in there?
theme?
Yeah, and sometimes it's just straight up, I got to prove that I'm not a wimp, or I got to prove that I'm special, and it's like, okay, so other than trying to prove things, or other than trying to make sure your whole world doesn't fall apart, I start to look for those other patterns, those other things that it's still trying to show up in a way. So it might just be interest. It might even just be like, oh, I like reading these books, or I like watching these movies or whatever. And it's like, what is it about those things? I don't know. I just always have. It's kind of weird. None of my friends are into it. Or I'm always like, ooh, here we go. I like those, and they may not be anything, but oftentimes it's where we can start to find a pattern or a doorway into, here's something that's been trying to express itself through you and as you in this lifetime. And what if we gave it more space to do that?
Yeah. And that's why if you don't have a name for it, I think you should call it Finding Your Gold.
You like, I think you're hot shit on that one.
It's pretty awesome.
Is it kind of like the rising phoenix?
No. Oh my God.
There's only like 4,000 therapists that are called the rising.
Such a shit. Oh my God. Do you know that when I first started out in my therapy practice, I was totally like Phoenix Rising.
I know. And I told you it was lame.
You told me it was lame then. It makes so much sense though when you do transformational healing work.
It's amazing. You die and then you're reborn.
Anyway. In the 30 years since that time, or in the whatever how many years it's been so funny to see, like, especially like near graduate schools or whatever, to see how many business cards come out and they're like that, as well as like butterflies and metamorphosis, like themed cards and stuff.
Yeah,
anyway,
that's cool.
Anyway, I got off track. the reason I say I call it finding your gold, even if it's name, because it really does feel like that when you're on the other end. When I experienced that with you, you did that for me in that car ride. I was like, and you actually did it a few weeks ago with me as well. And I'll circle back to that in a minute, but it does feel a lot like you're sort of opening a treasure chest and the glow of gold is reflected back to you. And so it really does feel special. And so the main thing that I wanted to sort of shift to though is sort of like well, what about this? Because you said, well, I don't just have we don't do this and then they just leave everything behind and go chase their whatever's trying to be lived through them and as them in this lifetime. And I want to give you an example, or I want to pitch. We can come up with something else if this doesn't work. But I do think that in the last several years, there have been this whole thing around find your passion and make money doing your passion or your whatever. Like there's sort of stuff around passion and purpose and, that sort of thing. And while I don't feel like we need to get into defining what those words are for this, I do wonder, for me, even, when I think about my essence, I'm always curious about the unseen world, like in terms of relating with it. Mm-hmm. And I'm always completely engaged, completely enamored in love with the outside world. So nature specifically, not necessarily cities, but nature and all that happens there. I mean, every single day, I could spend every single day outside. If I could, I would probably. And the other aspect of that for me, while I've done a lot outside, like in terms of gardening and beekeeping and, that sort of thing, I'm basically just kind of dicking around. I'm just playing out there. So when I think oh my God, this is where I'm happiest, do I somehow then I have another part of me that shows up and I think, oh, maybe I should somehow
make money with it.
Yeah. I remember there was I don't know how many years ago, I went to this thing I'll do a program called soul conditioning and it'll be a play on the Southern word soil and, the Southern slang for soil and we'll do a whole thing around the interpersonal work but it'll be in the garden and it'll be outside and I'll have clients outside. And immediately it was in terms of my energy for actually weaving that with making money. It was so not, I almost actually felt protective of no, this is not, we don't do this. We don't, but I don't know. There's a little bit of a question well, if this is maybe my, I can remember who you can tell me the author that does the zone of excellence versus zone of genius stuff.
Gay Hendricks. Yeah.
Gay Hendricks. Are we talking about, when you talk about your essence or what wants to be lived through are you talking about zone of genius? And as Probably. Gay Hendricks describes it?
Yeah, and I think it's important to name, and it may be just our culture, but there's this idea that somehow money is the gatekeeper for doing this stuff, for doing the thing that feels like play or that just feels like that helps us feel closer to ourselves. And I think it's wise that you want to protect it from that. I see where a lot of so many people come to me over the years I want to live my passion, I want to live my purpose. And inherently in there, it has to make them money. It has to be the thing that supports them. And there's this belief that if I find it, I'll make a lot of money. And it just sounds like it's some social media bullshit.
Right.
Whatever. I don't know who came up with this.
Who came up with it.
If it was that Tony Robbins crowd or whatever from the 90s or 80s, or it was if you find your thing, then you'll make shit tons of money. I don't know where it came from.
I don't either.
But it has nothing to do with money. And in fact, I would say that it's the opposite, that we would make money to empower us to be able to do these activities or to give these gifts or to whatever you want to call it. That would be the purpose of making money, is so that we had the time and the energy and space to do these things. Where in actuality, most of us are just like, work is the focus of my life, and I hope to fit in the stuff that is meaningful and purposeful around it.
Right.
Or like the thing that has me feel more connected with myself and more connected with others and the unseen, as you say. So I'm like, take money out of the picture, because most of us, I'm amazed at how many people don't do shit that just because they enjoy it.
Like AI ball bearings?
Yeah, ball bearings. Just like it's like, would you do this if nobody was watching? Would you do this if you didn't make money at it? Would you do this? There's a lot of folks that don't have anything in their lives that doesn't serve some kind of external validation or money purpose. We're losing touch with that essential part of us there. And I find that really sad.
Well, I think, and I do want to name, like, it's really important to kind of unpack this, because it would be easy to hear what you're saying and think, well, you must be in a point of privilege because you must be able to, like, I have to work 3 jobs, or I have to work 60 hours a week or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm really curious about that place, like, because that, I think, has something to do with the mindset too that you're talking about, of like, I do this in service of these other things, versus getting lost in, this is all I do. This is all I can do. This is all I have time and energy for.
I appreciate that. I mean, it is a luxury to be able to be curious about our essence, and I want to express that in this lifetime. If I need to feed my family, if I need to keep a roof over my head, I'm not thinking much about my essence at that point. That's the stage of like where I'm at. And that's a really tough place, and a lot of us are there. So you're exactly right. It's not assumed that that's where we are. That said, I still think that a lot of people still do it. They still find ways to play. They still find ways to integrate play and love.
Healthfully or unhealthily.
Yeah,
right?
They're members of whatever, they're a church, or they play music, or they find ways to do things that allow them to have these experiences, play sports, whatever, right? In fact, there's more people that are willing to play at that level. So I want to be careful that this is about every socioeconomic class or anything like that. The point I want to make, though, is that somehow purpose / passion is tied in with this essential thing. Like somehow it's going to make money.
Yes.
And that is the key to making money. Yeah. But I think and if you can divorce those two things and just allow yourself to go do the things that have you feel more connected with yourself on a deeper level, who knows, whatever like you said, you'll get ideas, and then you can decide, no, I don't want to fucking do that. That's not cool with me. Right. Or you might come up with ideas and you're like, that sounds really great. And that was true for me. I mean, with coaching, and I'm going to coach whether I get paid for it or not. Yeah. So.
Yeah, you will, because you do it all the time. I know.
I coach people and they don't listen to me. So I think that's incredibly liberating, to just come back to what's here, and it doesn't have to pay the bills. Mm-hmm. And then on the most basic, fundamental, like easy level, what could I do to support that or to nurture that instead of wait? Because a lot of us are in this place of like, once I make all the money that I need to make, then I can honor this part. Then I can get to living the life that I want to live. Mm-hmm. And the fact is usually those folks end up being fragile rich people. Like they never will allow themselves to have that exploration and play, and they forget how to do it. Mm-hmm. It only becomes about status and money or whatever. Mm-hmm. So it's a trap, and I see it quite often, actually.
Well, do you think that there's a place for having maybe it's not like, I'll use myself as the example. Like I may not be bringing beekeeping or gardening into my work with people, but do you think that there's a place for me to access? I do think that there's a place for this, and I'm wondering what you think of this, where I can maybe sit with or be outside, even if it's just for 10 or 20 minutes, and access how I feel, the state that I get into when I'm out there, and then intentionally bring it in to my work. Or maybe not even my work, because my work is about other people, but maybe I bring it into how I want to develop my offers or my business, like how might I want to weave it into, how do I engage my work? Because I'm saying this because I'm actively presently toying with this idea. Toying with this as a practice. So, because I have historically been like, yay, garden, business development. like, like I don't want to do any of that. And so I put it off and put it off and put it off. And so I'm trying to be more integrated and less of a baby about it. And one of the ways that has, instead of just like being having more of a discipline of like, yep, this is just what you need to do, whether you want to do it or not. I'm trying to find a way to actually bring more of what I would consider is still my essence. It's my state of it's the state that I'm in when I'm accessing that. Bring that more into when there is something to do for work. So for one number, the first part of that question is, do you think that is a good idea for people? Like, do you think that's a thing?
I think that's why ritual exists.
Wait, say that again?
I think that's why ritual exists. Ritual.
Oh, that why ritual exists. Okay, got
Rituals exist to help us access the state of mind, to see our lives from a different perspective, to see ourselves from a different place, to get a bit of distance from the shoveling shit and carrying water and wood and like all of that stuff. Like, it's a bitch. And that's a tough place to create from. I don't want to do this, right? That's natural that we would be at that state. Like, I don't want to fucking do a thing.
Right.
And I'm there. Like, absolutely. End of the day, fucking get off my back. Right? So ritual, whatever you would call, like it can be rituals with totems and altars and that kind of thing, or it can be out in the garden, or for me it's losing myself in music or out in the water or whatever. But it's just like, oh right, it's this remembering, and you've brought that word back to me. It's the remembering of what it's really about. And it's like, oh right, so what do I need in my life that helps me remember what this is really about? And it can look different. So if and I think the proof's in the pudding. Like if you're doing ritual and it doesn't help you remember or access that deeper part of you, it's not quite working. Right. So let's find another ritual for you. Yeah. Ritual may not be the word for you, but it needs to be something that helps you access that deeper part of you, and the one that reminds you that this is not all of who you are. Yeah. The meaning the part of you that is stuck in maybe in the childish place. So like, I don't want to pick up my toys, and I don't want to clean my room, and I don't want to have to make money. Right. And it's like, got it. Yep. Totally get it. And let's look at things from a bigger perspective, and you might realize, okay, this is a gift to be able to do this. And this is an opportunity. How do I want to do it on my terms? How can I do this in a way that integrates what I deeply care about? And it will require work and discomfort and uncertainty and all that stuff. But I can come in as an adult in that way.
And do you think that that's true for somebody that just, it's not necessarily they need to, like, they don't want to do work, or they need to pick up their toys? Thanks for the the zinger there from B's books. But
I wasn't doing that.
But do you think it's true for somebody like that? It's not necessarily they're resisting that sort of chop wood, haul water stuff, but it's actually more their internal world, like how they think. So for example, I'm thinking of somebody that is pretty. I'm going to go ahead and say pretty eclipsed by some aspects of themselves that are very, very analytical. And that actually, and it's while it's served them in a lot of ways, it's actually also starting to really it has taken away from their essence. And so do you think that it's not like they're fine in the work world or whatever, they can do the chop wood, haul water, shovel shit part, but do you feel like this could also apply for somebody that it's just more like a mental game? Like they might need ritual or something that will help them tap into their essence or essential nature, just to get out of their own way.
I think they would have to be the person to intuit that. Like if you want them to intuit that would be like I would. It may take them years to be the one to be like, I think I'm tired of running this analytical thing. I think it's getting in my way. I don't think this is all of who I am. And I feel like I'm limiting myself by living my world in this analytical way. Then there's all kinds of opportunities. Otherwise, I have my bias. He's like, oh, it'd be great if you weren't so analytical and you could be more heart-centered, or you could access this and that and see your life from these other perspectives. That's my shit. Like that's
right.
And I might be right, let's say. They may arrive at the same conclusion years later, but I don't know if it helps me to be like, hey, you should be this way.
Right.
I think if they got to that place, then it'd be like, okay, cool, we have options here.
Right.
It could be medicine journeys. It could be whatever. It could be all kinds of different things that they could be led through to help them access more of who they are. And then start to have some choice around that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I appreciate that nuance. I appreciate the distinction too, or that nuance around like, what I heard was like you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink kind of thing. You can even make them thirsty, but it's still their choice to see the water and want to drink.
I don't know, maybe I've been wrong too.
A lot. I can tell you lots of places you've been wrong. I'm kidding. I don't think you're wrong here, though. I think that you're. I mean, the reason that I brought this in today, and the reason that I wanted to hear more about it was, I kind of wish that we could do, the listeners could hear how you do it a little bit more explicitly, because it's so cool.
Well, let me say one thing before we wrap up that part. Like that pattern, let's say if we come back to the analytical person, what I might do is have them ramp it up. Like let's really dial it up.
Very gestalt
let's
of you.
See this. Let's hit the loud pedal and let's just go as fast as we can. Let's really do it. And I'm being playful here, but the idea is to really test it and allow them to see if more is more, if more is better for them. But again, I don't know if I got to be careful about who I take on if they're stuck in a place and I think early on I tend to try to look for folks that are like, no, I sense this and I want help accessing this more and living from this place more.
Yeah.
And then there's like, great, I'm not trying to get you anywhere where you don't want to go. Yeah. So that doesn't feel fun to me.
Yeah. I don't need to say anything. I was thinking more like it's important for people to, that's what websites are for. It's important for people to understand what you do and what you're about, and, so they know what they're getting in. They get to sort of like have that consent initially of like, yeah, this is what I.
Well, it's a willingness to be polarizing. I think early on I was, maybe there were times where it was like, oh, I have to present a certain way in order to get a client. And then hopefully we'll get to, I'm in the process of doing that now.
Say more. What do you mean?
Say more.
You got a beef with therapy style?
I do.
You do. You want to say it? You want to exaggerate that right now for a minute?
Say more about that.
No. Not the style. Say more about your beef. I mean, exaggerate your beef.
Hold on.
Put your hand on your heart.
I felt that. there's been iterations of this is who I am, this is the work that I do, these are the people that I serve, and then it's like, that's shifting again. So I've had several of those shifts over the course of the better part of the last 20 years. So and I'm in another one now, and every time it feels like, ooh, this is going to be the end of your career.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And so far it hasn't. But you could poison me and get them insurance money. You'll be fine.
That's not how I'm thinking about the end of your career. And I know that's not how you're thinking it might be the end of your career either. It's fear talking that somehow this is not welcome.
Well, if we were to come back to, what this work of integrating essence looks like, that's what it does look like. Is could I allow this more? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There's the practical nature, and then there's like, I don't know could I? What if I allowed more of this into my life? What if I was more honest? What if I was more transparent, more honest about what I stand for and what I want in my life? And then there's the confrontation of like, well, then this you run the risk of this being criticized, being seen as a weirdo,
polarized,
or you're going to risk your career and all the other. It just shows right up. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the real resistance. Like when I think of Stephen Pressfield's work, there's the resistance of like, I don't want to go work out today. Okay, got it.
Are you talking about the art of war of art or whatever it is?
War of art. And then there's the resistance of I have something to say. There's something in me. I have a voice. Mm-hmm. I have something to express. Mm-hmm. And that's scary to express that. Mm-hmm. So same thing with essence. Like if I'm going to really bring this into the world in some way, I can go do it in private. That's fine. But if I do want to integrate this, if I want it to become part of the community that I'm in or the work that I do, my profession, there's always this risk of I'm going to be seen here. It's going to be revealed, and it might not go well. I'm going to be, whatever. I've learned to play this other role in order to be accepted and successful. And so let's just stick with the script, kind of a thing.
And so when you do that, when you succumb, let's just explore, like when you succumb to that, just stick with the script, how do you feel?
Well, for me, I always felt like shit. Mm-hmm. But I've always, like, even from when I was in college, I was like, all right, fuck this. I just need to figure out how to do this. I knew I wanted to start my own business out of college. So I was like, I just need to figure out what I need in order to start a business. Mm-hmm. So I didn't give a shit about grades. I went and did my projects at school in order to develop my own
skills,
things. And like, okay, I need to learn these things. So I don't know if I'm a good, I'm not saying I'm super special or anything, but I just wasn't one that ever like jumped through the hoops all the time.
Well, I think it's important, but
when there have been times like when my business, weirdly enough, ended up doing a lot of, my first business was video production, and we ended up doing a lot of political ads. It fucking felt way out of alignment there. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, this is not why I got into this work, is to spread fear and misinformation and shit. Mm-hmm. And like, but the money's so good, and next year you can quit, next season you can quit. And it was just like, I was like, oh, it was gross. Mm-hmm. And then eventually I did, it's like walking away. I don't want to fucking do that.
Well, I want to pick something a little bit more subtle, and I'm really just going for like, how do you feel when you play out the script and the programming, and how do you feel when you start to weave in your essence? That's all I'm really going to seek here from you. But but let's pick something a little bit less clear. So let's pick domesticity. That something that you have clear competing commitments with your family, me, your daughter. And so there are times, there's things that are happening that just you're kind of in the thick of smelling the shit that you're shoveling. You're in the discomfort of, it's like you're just in the thick of it. And there's an experience that you have of, maybe you would say words like, I need more aliveness. I'm missing out on aliveness. Or like there's the mundane, like meh kind of feeling of like you just get up and it's the same shit, the same routine. Right?
It's not really bad, but go. Okay,
well, everybody experiences this. That's why I'm trying to highlight it.
It's like,
this is life. This this is part of it. We don't get away from all this.
Mm-hmm.
We still have to do the things that we have to do to make the fucking dinner or whatever, take out the trash or whatever, simple stuff, as well as chop wood, hot water, right? And so my question is mostly like when you're staunchly in that pattern, when anybody is staunchly in that pattern, they're pretty far away from this essence, right? What we're really here to do.
Right.
And so when you're here, how do you feel? What might be some?
Yeah, I would just say deflated. One thing I'll get to here, and this is part of the design. I think it's important to understand this, is to be with a partner who gets your essence too and supports that. If you are with a partner that does not see that and does not appreciate it or is threatened by it, they will unconsciously create an environment where that doesn't get expressed. And I want to name it. That's a really big deal because you're an ally there. You're great at being like, hey, when was the last time you kind of tended this garden and fed it and nurtured this part of you? Mm-hmm. Which is awesome. You don't see it as a threat. You see it as a gift. I know you see it as threatening if I don't tend the garden, that I'm going to be toxic in the house or something. That's a possibility. I understand where you're coming from there. But I think that's a big deal, and it comes back to a lot of the relationship conversations we've had about why we're with somebody. Because if I'm only with somebody to make sure I'm not alone versus I'm with somebody that we're here to help each other become who we're ultimately here to become, I think that's a big deal to be with somebody there. And then the second part, let me just finish. The second part is when we're in that young part of us, we want to find an escape from the mundane shit. We want to find a way to be done with it once and for all. And that's where a lot of this bullshit of like, if I just find my passion or my purpose, then I don't have to deal with this other shit anymore. There's these weird escape formulas that we come with in our head. If I just make enough money, if I'm just important enough, I don't have to shovel the shit. So, and I think it's important to be like, no, this is part of it too. There's no escape from having the day-to-day challenges that we have, but that's not an excuse to drown out the part of us or to drown out the essential nature stuff that we've been talking about and make it either or.
You're moving way too fast. I was just trying to have you like baby step it for people. Like, what do you feel when you're in your programming? And then what do you feel when you're attached to your essence? When you're connecting.
Right. So I would say that if we're disconnected from it, there's a sense of anxiety and depression and drain and trapped and, all of that stuff. Really unfun. And it can be just a low level of just like, it's always there.
It being always there.
That feeling. Like kind of
like low grade depression.
Yeah. And it can be challenging. Like, I wonder why I'm this way. I wonder what's going on. A little hard to put the finger on. Like the stories change every 6 weeks, but the feeling doesn't. The feeling's just consistent. So I've been kicking around this next book idea for a while, and if I get through another week and I don't feel like I make progress on it, it weighs on me.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a weight to it, and it's a different weight than shit. I got to do the taxes.
I love that. I love that.
It is a burden.
I love that.
There's a burden feeling of like, you're not honoring this, man.
So I want to just bookmark that for a second. I'll come right back to that. But this place, let's just, for simplicity's sake, how you feel when you're in that mundane, blah, 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 programming. And then when you're actually accessing what you're here to do or your essence, your essential nature, when you're attuning with that more or you're doing ritual or something is helping you access that state more. How do you feel?
The language that tends to come to mind, and this doesn't make sense to me, but it's just like, yes, this is why I'm alive. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, which sounds like programming. Mm-hmm. I don't like those words, but I've had those experiences throughout my life where I'm like, yes, this is what you're supposed to do. Not you're a good boy, you're being a good boy, but it's just like, yes.
It's more of a wholeness as a part of the whole. It's you recognizing your place in all the things.
And there's just it's a beautiful certainty. And that experience has been the same, but the context has been very different over the course of my life. I've had it when performing music. I've had it when coaching. I've had it when teaching. I've had it when writing. I've had it when traveling. I've had it
which is really great too. I love that you highlighted that, because it doesn't have to be one thing, or it doesn't have to be some childhood, thing that was fun when you were a kid, or brought out your play when you were a kid.
No, and that's why in my book I pointed to the experience, because if you make it about the activity, you probably have moved on. The activity there's no more juice in that squeeze. But if you pay attention to the experience of where that is, it'll lead you into these different activities in different places. And to me, that's what it's about.
Yeah.
Instead of I'm still doing the thing I'm doing that gave me that feeling when I was 20, even though I don't feel that anymore. It's well, what the fuck, man?
That's beautiful. That's so much like nature.
It is nature.
It is nature.
It's not nature.
It is nature. That's right. Maybe that's why we feel such deep belonging when we finally say yes to that.
Why do you say it's like, why do you say it's like, what's the nature of it?
You'd have to be somebody that pays attention to what's happening out there all the time. But it's constantly moving life force energy through, and it iterating in some sort of creative way. It's coming to life in some sort of creative way. And the way that it came to life last year or 3 years ago is not the same way that it comes to life this year.
Right.
And it's different. And it doesn't just grow bigger. It's really different. Even plants, they'll just fucking move. They just migrate where you plant them there, and then suddenly they're over there.
This is what's needed here. This is what's needed now. But the thing that's nonstop is that they belong. They have a right to exist, and they're just going to iterate their life force. That's just what they do. And there's a sense of in the most natural state that we talk about ecosystems, everything belongs there, and everything is needed. And so when I think about you talking about what you're saying, really that life force essence, it's needed. And so then we kind of come back to what you were saying around, if you don't do this, when you don't do when you're not going to write this book, when you step away from it, you actually feel really off. You're not living what you're supposed to be living. That, I love that you feel that. That's such a beautiful, I want that for everyone. And I think that your gift, your skill of helping people just drawing that gold out for people to see for themselves, that helps other people recognize that too, for their own experience of what feels bad, what feels great. Oh my gosh, this is where I really feel what I'm here to do, or how I belong versus how I don't, how it just feels off. Something's really wrong here. And I love that. I've started to feel that with my own business development, which I've never, ever, ever felt. And I think it has to do with integrating more of that essential nature, which you helped me with, integrating more of my essential nature in. I think it's letting go of the martyrdom of I have to do X, Y, Z.
Or this way, have to do it this way because everybody else is doing it this way.
I have to is always really ooh, what's up with that? And then what would be satisfying? All right, I've got these chores. What would be the most satisfying way to do it?
Yeah.
If making X amount a year is my challenge, then what would be the most satisfying way? So when I say satisfying, for me, that's listening in and being what would honor that part? It doesn't have to be the most rad, passionate, fired up, altered state kind of a thing, but just satisfying. That was good, satisfying work. I can dust my hands off and be hell yeah, that was good work. I wasn't looking forward to that. I put my back into it and got it done, and that was satisfying.
Yeah.
And I think that's ultimately what we want, is to have a satisfying experience of the work. But a lot of us don't answer the word, what would make it satisfying. It's more what do I have to do? And if we're willing to get curious about what would be satisfying, we have to use some effort, but it breaks us out of the this kind of autopilot mode of doing it in a certain way. And I think the other part of coming back to the point that we were making earlier, that it changes and shifts, is that a lot of us want to be done. We want to sleepwalk. We don't want to have to think. We don't want to have to pay attention.
But don't you think that that's a consequence of being kind of immersed in this programmed
I think
place
it's our
where you
nature.
can only see 3 feet in front of
I
you?
think it's just part of our nature that we just want to go to sleep. And I feel it. I can feel this part, and I'm like, look at you, motherfucker. If you keep this up, you're going to go right to sleep. And I can hear little voices like, dude, your stage of life, man, you can kind of coast from here. You'll be like fucking fine. I'm like, no, motherfucker. Holy shit. That's the like, come and lay down. Got a pillow for you.
Poppy fields are real pretty.
Just fucking, just right, roll right to sleep. You don't have to worry about that anymore.
Just look at Instagram.
Just fucking, just check
at
out,
some
man.
puppies and boobies.
Just check out. And it's like, holy shit, there it is. And so I feel that temptation is there to always go to sleep, and it does take work to come back to, where is that expression now? Where is that thing? What's wanting to happen now? And it requires us to be awake. It requires us to be present.
Yeah.
And it's work. And a lot of us don't want to, I don't want to fucking, I'm lazy as fuck. I think really, I was like, just want to fucking coast. And just like, no, it's work, man. Work meaning you've got to be awake. You've got to be present. You've got to pay attention, and you've got to be curious and then willing to try shit, like willing to experiment with shit.
Maybe that's why I like what you do, this Bring Out the Gold so well, is because you're actually inviting people to wake up.
Could be.
Yeah.
If these interviews are helping you, please leave a positive review on whatever podcast app you use so that others can discover the show more easily.